This is Between the Lines. Today, we dissect the road less travelled.
Hello, Carol here again with the Road Less Traveled, chapter 26, the risk of commitment. And commitment, you already know, is when you, I was about to say devote, but when you are ready to give the most of you, at least, to the other person, to be there for the other person, to be constant in your decision of being with the other person, whether it's if you are a therapist, the commitment to your patient, or if you are a parent, the commitment to your children, or if you are married or in a couple or with a partner, the commitment to that other person. Or it could be to a friendship or anything in life. We have already talked, the doctor has already talked in the first section of the book called Discipline about character disorders. And so there are people who had character disorder and also neurotics. And character disorder people, regarding commitment, they totally avoid commitment because they do not know what commitment is. They may know the word, of course, but they do not have that experience in their life as children, so they don't really know how to do that. And that is difficult to teach them unless they do have another experience of somebody committing to them. It's difficult for them to change that behavior. But in the case of neurotics, as we also talked about in the first section, Discipline, they are like more open to change. If they are open to change, they can do it, they can change, they can be committed to other people, but they are the ones that generally tend to avoid being in relationships because they feel that they first of all, maybe they have had some experience and they are aware of what commitment really is in a relationship, what it entails and everything, but they just refuse that part of them because they think they will be abandoned somehow, or they maybe had the experience of being committed to another person and the other person went away, abandoned them, or maybe die, or they felt rejected in some way and they are super afraid now to being committed to another person. So that is generally the case of neurotics. And sometimes, for example, the doctor mentions they have had the experience of being committed to another person but not receiving anything in return from the other part, for example, with the parents. And we will see an example then that the doctor mentions. And ¿se habla de todo esto? Bien. And that case is the case of Rachel. It goes by several pages here in the book. I will just highlight some ideas from the experience of this person in therapy with the doctor. Rachel started therapy because she said to the doctor, I am a frigid, I cannot really experience sex, so that is what got me into a divorce after a short period of marriage with my husband. And after that, she started working on that. She started telling the doctor, for example, that she had been brought up by a mother who was a great manager, a great businesswoman, a great person as a worker. But at home she had so many rules and so many things, and she expected and so many expectations from Rachel. So she always felt like she would be fired up by her mother, fired by her mother. So sh her mother treated her as an employee. And she never felt that she had any right as a person. She only had to fulfill her mother's expectations. And that is why she felt that she had always to fulfill this commitment, but never getting anything in return. So it was some kind of the cases of neurotics, as we were saying. And because of that experience, she developed what the doctor calls the "I'll desert you before you desert me" syndrome. And she never really get to know other people because she was afraid of committing too much from her perspective, because it was her experience that she would commit, for example, to her husband, and maybe he would leave her by another woman. Or in the relationship with the doctor, she always tried to avoid therapy. When she was getting closer to the doctor, for example, she would say, I have so many problems, I don't want to come here to therapy, even though the doctor knew that wasn't true at all. She would find ways to escape from therapy when she was getting really close to the doctor. Or, for example, she couldn't cry at first in therapy. So she said, I'm a complete disaster, I leave therapy. And it took for the doctor several times or several weeks to convince her back into therapy and that kind of thing. So she always finds excuses in order not to commit to the therapy, which, even though it was for her own good, for herself, for her health, mental health, and also her health with other relationships, because she was growing in the process. It was really hard for her to conquer that fear of going into therapy and being able to open her heart to the doctor in this case. And I mentioned she couldn't cry at first in therapy, and then other things. For example, she wrote poetry, and once she told the doctor, oh, I write poetry. And he said, well, show me the poetry to me. And it took for her like 1 year or so in order to really open up and show him her poetry, even though that could be something totally normal for another person. But for her, it was like opening her whole heart to the world, and in this case to the doctor, like showing herself, right? But after 4 years of treatment, she could become like she could achieve better relationship, more healthy relationships. She could understand that not everyone was like her mother, and that she had a right of being just by being a person in the world, right? So she did find a lot of things and really could overcome this fear. And what the doctor takes from this chapter is, and from some other stories he mentions briefly here, that he compares the fear of commitment with the fear of a soldier entering a battlefield. And he says even a soldier entering a battlefield, he has no choice. Generally, he has to go in no matter what. And however, in this case, the patient or the person can run away from the problem, as we mentioned before. It takes really a lot of courage to stay in the problem, or to confront, or to fight against this fear, because you may tend to go back into what you already know. You have other choices, and the soldiers generally don't. They have to go into battle even if they are afraid of not. But in our case, we can decide not to go or not to conquer that fear and go back to our old patterns, our limited past, and again, we can diminish ourselves. But if we do take this risk of commitment, of committing to the relationship, whatever relationship it is, of course, we need courage and will to do that. But in the end, we can learn a lot of things and we can also grow up. And as we said before, our idea here with this book and in this section is for us to confront our fears, to conquer them, and to become better in the long run. So that's it for today. I hope you also get some ideas from it, some insights and reflections. And if you feel this can help some other person, please share the video or comment your experience if you want to. If you are able to open your heart. I know it's difficult to be vulnerable. But yeah, that's it. So have fun and see you next Sunday. Bye bye.
Stay tuned for Ulua's next episode.